will be coming from Luke chapter 14, verses 25 through 30. We'll start off with 25 through 27. So if somebody wants to read that, 25 through 27.
Says a large crowd was following Jesus. He turned around and said to them, "If you want to be my disciple, you must, by comparison, hate everyone else. Your father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters. Yes, even your own life. Otherwise, you cannot be my disciple. And if you do not carry your own cross and follow me, you cannot be my disciple."
Amen. I thought kind of applied to what we're going to be talking about tonight. It was actually from a poll from the Gallup that says that fewer than 10% of evangelical Christians could be called deeply committed. Most of those who profess Christianity don't know the basic teachings and don't act differently because of their Christian experience. Has also found that almost 46% of all of evangelicals read their Bible only once a week or not at all.
What's that number again?
46%, almost half, say that they either only read it once a week, and keep in mind these are also people that go to church, or not at all. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, considering tonight our discussion on what's the cost for discipleship. And so after Trey had read that scripture, one of the things that, and I'll get to the question. What's up, Bishop? How you doing? All right, man. We just got started, so you're good. Because one of the things that stood out to me about this is what we consider, or the world considers, to be a successful church. And because at the beginning it says there was large crowds, and so here Jesus is in front of a large crowd. Now, today's society would depict that a large crowd means you have a successful church, but I mean, as we'll see as Jesus gets into it, that's not necessarily always the case. And so just be conscious of the fact that the Bible does say large is the gate to destruction and narrow is the gate to life. So everybody that's doing it doesn't necessarily always make it right. And to me, almost to the point that sometimes it appears as if Jesus is pushing people away more than he is actually asking them to be a part. Because again, as we'll learn on tonight, I mean, he really wants us to count the cost. Trey just read it. So the first thing it says, what does Jesus tell his disciples in verses 25 through 26, and what do you think he means? Amen. And if you want, I can have Trey read it one more time. Can you read 25 and 26 again?
A large crowd was following Jesus. He turned around and said to them, "If you want to be my disciple, you must, by comparison, hate everyone else. Your father and mother, wife and children, and brothers and sisters. Yes, even your own life. Otherwise, you cannot be my disciple."
So, what does Jesus tell his disciples in this verse, and what do you think he means?
I put that he warns those who think they want to follow him, that, they need to be willing to forsake all of that, like everything, including their own lives, in order to follow him.
Amen. Anybody else?
Kind of same thing that you have to be invested in those around you, and then also be invested in your own life. That if you're gonna follow me and you're gonna live through me, then if you're not gonna be invested in those around you, and you're not, you're sure it's not gonna be invested in your own life, which means, your walk is null and void, and you have no life. You're just a dead man walking or their person.
Amen.
He wants you to like if you're gonna follow him, he wants you to love him more than anything else to the point where it almost looks like you hate him.
Amen. Should have went before you. I'm just kidding.
Bring representative of
Prioritize.
prioritize, yes. And put Jesus ahead of your mother, your father, your family, and yourself. So
Anybody else?
It's almost like to put it in like something like that I experienced. Cause you said it's almost like he was pushing them away. In a sense, it's like I went to do an interview one time, and the position I applied for, turns out when I got there and she started breaking it all down, what all it entailed, I was like, well, I don't know if this is really what I'm gonna do. And so it's kind of like you go for that interview, and you find like they'll tell you like, let us know now if this is something that doesn't fit you, or this is something that you're not ready. Like the who was it? He said, what was it? I can't remember the passage, but he said, what do I need to do, to be saved? And she told him, yeah, and he was like, well, give up all your possessions, and he's like, well, I'm not gonna, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like I kind of think about that's kind of made me think about that when you said he was kind of pushing him away. In a sense, is it's like this is the criteria, and you either meet it and pursue it, or if not, then this is not, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, you said kind of pushing them away. Like some people aren't willing to accept or like commit to that, you know what I'm saying? And that's just, this is like eternal, like spiritual, but this is even practical things like daily. People like will shy away from commitment to whatever, just it's an endless list of things, but that's what I'm thinking about.
Anybody else?
I'm opinion back off of what you're related to a job interview is weeding out those that are not going to be committed. It's letting you know ahead of time, this is what it's going to take.
Yeah.
I think on that, I'm looking at when you talk about like, does not hate their father, mother, wife, children, but so on down the list. And I think it's because, Jesus knows that there'll be things that we're going to encounter possibly with those individuals. It's gonna be like, you're going to have to decide, is it going to be me, or is it going to be like, and like going back to what Trey said, he said, love me above everything else, and it's like you said too, man, like you said, the crowd was large, and it was definitely like a weeding out process to like, okay, well, this is really what it means to follow me. This is what you have to do. And I think, you read that, most people are like, man, I hate my father and mother. And it's like, man, it's pretty, like you said, he's almost like pushing them away, but he's really pressing people to like really think, like to really, really count that cost. Is this what I want to do? Like I said, it's just because I think things that you encounter along your walk, even within, because the one that when he talks about like even your own life, because it's things that about yourself, you're like, well, this is what I want, like my will and whatnot. It's like even that's not, you got to do away with that too.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Piggyback on that is like your father, your mother, your children. Usually to most people, those are the most valuable people to you. And so the Lord is like saying like, these are the most valuable things to you. Count the cost, and like, I'm asking you to give up the most valuable things for me. So like, you have to see the value of what I'm going to give in like relation to what you already have. So,
Anybody else? Yeah, because same thing. I said our love and commitment to Christ must be stronger than anything else we love, almost to the point that it exactly looks like hate. I think here Jesus was trying to shock the crowd into understanding the cost of what it would be in order for them to be a disciple. He is not contradicting himself about not loving, but he wants us to understand the expense of making him the priority and everything else comes second. Even to the point where, because I said, the old saying is, nothing's free, but yet, salvation is free, but there's a cost to be a disciple. And, I kind of thought about it the other day, the trip to Africa. I didn't pay for it, so the trip was free, but it's still going to cost me something. It's going to cost me my time. It's going to cost me the things that I need to get in order to go to Africa. So even though it was free, and it's going to cost me the commitment because Jason paid for it, now I feel as though I should be committed to go, even to the point where, they talk about college athletes, where your education is free. Yes, but there's still a cost, because at the end of the day, if you're not doing the necessary things in order for you to be able to be on that team, it's not free anymore. There's a cost, there's a commitment, there's a requirement, Well, it's the same thing, because see, I think that's where a lot of people get confused. Yes, salvation is free, but you can't separate salvation from discipleship. It's not two different things. So if there's a cost in discipleship, then that means there's a cost in salvation. Now, we can't do anything to get salvation, but at the end of the day, if our desire is not to grow in Christ, then I would think that we need to, like you said, we need to back up and reevaluate ourselves, to the point, just like you said, we have to deny ourselves, and so my love for my children almost has to look like hate. And Jesus is not telling us to hate those individuals, but it should be so much about Christ, even to the point where I think Jalen brought it up a couple of weeks ago about a parent, a child being disobedient to a parent because of what God's word says. Well, at the end of the day, in all honesty, I'm not, be tactful about it, but if your parents are telling you to do something contrary to what the word of God says, then, check your source. You know what I'm saying? So, I think it almost has to be to that point where anything, and even materialistic things, anything that comes before Christ is an idol within itself, even if it's your own family. Because, we always look at it as materialistic things, but it's not always materialistic things. People can become our idols.
I think the reason why that, and even the way you worded it, like, yeah, and they said, yes, even your own life.
Yeah.
It's like, just in case you was thinking it, it's like, I'm talking about you too. And I think, me personally, I think that's the biggest one, because, just our selfish nature, our, sometimes we have motives, agendas, and all those things. It's like, all that stuff, you have to, that can't even be part of it. It has to be me, even, over yourself. We always try to, we don't, a lot of times people always think, like, I'm going to take care of number one. I'm going to take care of myself first. And that's just why I think that's the hardest one out of that list.
Yeah, because it's easier to gratify the flesh than it is, because you'll even turn against your mom and dad or your brother and sister or your, you'll turn against your own family for your own selfish ambition. Anybody else? The next question says, how might you apply the command of Jesus in verses 25 and 26 to your own life? How can you apply it to your own life and in the circumstances you have now?
For me, I think it starts with life, just a really true, really honest examination of where you are. Because some of that we can think that I'm not, that I'm loving God first. But when you start examining your time, just where your energy, all those things, it's like you have to be honest with it. You can't say he's number one, and it's like, well, I ain't even talked to him today. If we ain't talked to him today, he's not number one. That's just reality. It's like, I haven't thought about him today. Well, he's not number one. So for me, it's like, I think it starts with like a true heart to heart, with yourself, not based upon, like I was talking about, not based upon your neighbor, but based upon the word.
Amen. Anybody else?
Just like we just kind of discussed a few minutes ago, knowing that I have to be prepared to, I guess, walk away from all of them, you know, family and friends and the things that I, you know, hold dear in order to truly and wholeheartedly follow Christ. I can't, you know, well, just this one time, you know, I'm gonna go hang out with them because, you know, but if it, you know, means going against the family to follow Christ, then that's what I have to do, you know, and it just be by myself, so to speak. You know, it's like sometimes we have to stand alone, even though we won't be alone because me plus Jesus is majority, and then, you know, everybody else has to, you know, I can't worry about what everybody else is, you know, what are they gonna think? Well, they're gonna be mad at me. Oh, you know, I don't want people to be mad at me, but sometimes they're just gonna be mad at you. And you just kind of gotta just wait on Jesus to fix whatever it is. But knowing that me and him, you know, we'll just have to, we'll discuss it and talk about it, and I don't have to worry about the consequences because he's gonna take care of it as long as I'm following what he wants me to do. Then everything else, he takes care of the consequences. That's what trust is. We obey God and leave the consequences to God.
Amen. Anybody else? I said that I cannot allow myself to be caught up on what others think about me, including my own family. My eyes have to continually be focused on Christ. Colossians 3:2, set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. Matthew 6:33, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and these things shall be added unto you. You know, so as long as I understand who my priority is in life, which is Jesus Christ, then those that I have issues or problems with will work themselves out. So I was right in line with Miss Anita there.
Really cool.
I think for myself, I would say to like start with like just look at all the things that influence me the most, whether I realize it or not, you know, whether it's like writing it down or whatever, and then like see just what those influences are and like how it affects me, like honestly, you know, and then like I begin to like cut back on those things and like switching that time with whatever that is with maybe just reading or praying or just maybe just like a moment of like meditation or whatever it is, like supplementing that with him basically, whatever is involved, but it's involved with him, you know what I mean? So just but that would be like for myself.
You remember?
I think it's good for everybody to do. That'd be like a good, I think, lesson for the week, like to just take home. If you don't take nothing else home, like I think that's a great thing to do. Like write it down, and again, they go back to me like being honest about like what influences you, you know, because there's no need like making nothing up or lying about it because God knows what influences us the most, you know. So it's like write it, and like he said, just make it a point to. I think number one, you know, you pray about it and you ask God, like, you know, this is just being real with him. This is a big influence on me. I don't want it to be the biggest influence of my life. I want you to be the biggest influence in my life, and just, you know, do your part. If we do our part, God will definitely do his part. He will do his part if we do ours. But I think that'd be a great assignment for the week, you know.
Well, and that's what at our job we got a new sales manager, and she was talking to this young lady and had it up on a whiteboard. You know, she drew a pie chart, and she said, "All right, how much time do you think you spend doing this?" You know, and she shaded out, you know, 5%, and then, you know, 25% of this, and all I could think of, like G was talking about, was if God did a pie chart on my life, you know, what percentage of that pie chart would he be a part of? You know what I'm saying? And so just like I said, I mean, at the very beginning, you know, almost 50% of all evangelical Christians only read their Bible once a week or not at all. I mean, so again, I go back to, you know, and it's convicting. I mean, because I've been that person. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying something that, you know, to convict anybody. If there's not a minimum of 15% of your time to God, then, I mean, are you really making him number one? And I know we all work. I mean, everybody, 8-hour day and all that good stuff. But I mean, again, I don't care what it is. That's the reason why I love that one song where he turns around and goes, you complain about the job that you prayed for me to give you. I was waiting to talk to you, but you turned it on. You turned on your music, and he just goes through all the different list of things that, I just want some time with you. I'm like, then there was another video I saw, The Uncomfortable Jesus, where he's getting ready to leave. I said, no, you stay here. I'll be back. You don't need to come with me on this one. And so it was just interesting to see. And at the end of the day, he got home and Jesus was sitting at the table. He goes, man, I'm tired, man. We'll do it tomorrow. And so, I think G had a phenomenal point with that one. Anybody else? Amen. Can somebody read Luke 9:23?
Then he said to all of them, if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me.
Okay, amen. The question is, list the 3 criteria that Jesus gives for being his disciple.
1, deny yourself.
2,
2, take up the cross.
Let's say 3.
What'd you say? Follow him. Which I looked up deny, to declare to be untrue, to reject as false, to withhold, refuse, or give in to refuse to fulfill the request of expectations, to refuse to acknowledge or recognize, and to refuse. And then I looked up take, to get into one's hands, control or possession, to grasp or grip, to effect a stronghold in a sudden manner by capturing something, to carry one's possession, and then follow, to come or go after, proceed behind, to go after in pursuit, to keep under surveillance, to move along the course, to move in the direction as to be guided by someone, to lie in the same path as someone, to be parallel to someone, to accept guidance, command, or leadership from someone, and to take as a model to try to imitate somebody. So those are the 3 things that Christ is calling each one of us to do. And like I said, salvation is free, but it costs us our life. And honestly, I know it says deny daily, but I'll be honest with you about myself. I have to deny myself all day long. Sometimes minute by minute, sometimes hour by hour, just depending upon what thing is in front of me that allows me the opportunity to trip and stumble. And it would be easy to gratify the flesh, trust me. I know, but after you gratify the flesh, the result is empty. It was good for that moment, that high, that whatever you call it. It's over with. There's an emptiness, there's a void, that stinks. Anybody else? Did you have something, G? Oh.
You just asked for the three things, right?
Yes. Yeah. Deny, take up your cross, and follow. Somebody read Luke 14:28-30.
You were 27 earlier.
Yeah, you can read 27 too, that's fine. 27-30.
And whosoever doth not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, sitteth not down first and counteth the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it? Lest haply after he hath laid the foundation and is not able to finish it, all that behold it begin to mock him, saying, "This man began to build and was not able to finish."
Amen. So the question is, what project have you started that you were unable to finish? And I ran out of paper, so. So anybody?
So when you sent me that and I read that question, a project didn't come to mind, but just kind of piggyback off of what you've been talking about as far as I think my walk at times is unfinished with some things. Like I get, you feel yourself about to overcome some things, or you feel yourself I'm about to remove some things that I'm struggling with. And then you look back and like you say, you do this self-check and you do this self-observation and you go, man, that's still a huge hole in my armor. So I think it's not so much as a project, but I just think about when you mentally think about things that you struggle with, you're keeping it, you're trying to stay focused on it and say, okay, I'm going to overcome this. And so you're really mindful of it. But then, like I said, the moment that you get to that point where you're like, dang, you forget, the moment you take your mind away from it, or you let it, or you think you've overcome it, you're like, dang, I'm looking at the same thing again. So not so much as a project, but I just think that some things in your walk where you're just like, man, I guess I'm still chipping away because
That's where I was with. I didn't think like, okay, I started to build this fence or whatever, and I just never did get it done because it cost too much money. I thought more like, kind of like what he's talking about. It's just your walk is a lifetime, man. It's definitely not a marathon. I mean, it's definitely not a sprint. It's a marathon. I think about like in a marathon, you have parts in the race where you like, man, you're good, but then like sometimes you get, man, like you want to stop, or you may stop in a marathon, but and like you said, it's just amazing. Like sometimes you think, okay, man, because me and Debo had this conversation the other day, and we were talking a lot about like, I told him like for me personally, like last year, probably like, for me like growth-wise, spiritually, like it was a year I'm not, just was a really good year for me, and a lot of changes and stuff in it. And I told him like how now like this year, man, it seemed like so many things are like a struggle. I'm like, and so I guess the project would be like, cause I know what my desire is and what I want to do and what I want to be. I know all of that, but it's like, it seems like you said, the minute you start thinking about it, like, okay, well, I'm here. It's like, so now I got to deal with this, and I got to deal with that. And it's like, you just constantly, and I don't know if that's just, I don't know if that's like, it's not necessarily a faith issue, like Peter takes us out of Jesus, like that, but like years ago, like this guy was talking about like the dangers of drifting and how you can be like, you walk and you're there and everything, and so you might be like, what, I'm not going, like, I'm not, time got short, I'm not gonna read today, and then the day turned into like a couple of days, and life just starts happening, and before you know it, he's like, and you look up and it's so true, man. Anytime you get away from like, reading all the time, studying all the time, praying all the time, you can think it don't make a difference. And I don't, listening to music is fine, but there's no replacing like reading the word and talking to God one-on-one. It's just no replacing. I think, for me, that sometimes you get to like, you maybe just like get comfortable. For a second, okay, like, man, I got to this part, I'm gonna take a little, breather. And when you take that breather, it's like, probably shouldn't have stopped.
Anybody else?
I guess for me, it's just kind of like, if I don't like put something down, but the likelihood of me like going through with it, like it just like it decreases significantly. So kind of just like when I have a goal I set for myself, or something I set for myself is kind of like you said, sit down first and estimate how much it's going to cost you and how you're going to kind of like having the blueprint. So I think about when
talks in verse 28. It's kind of like setting out a blueprint of how you're going to build it. Because if you just start trying to build a building without a plan, it's not going to come out well. So for me, I guess the two things that I kind of want to start kind of getting the blueprint set for is because something I challenge myself to do is in whatever way it is, kind of like just having an impact on someone, a positive impact. It's where they're kind of like they just kind of like either if they're having a down day, kind of just giving them a word of encouragement or just something that kind of like just kind of motivate them spiritually and kind of get that seed planted and not worrying about like the anything else. Just plant the seed and kind of God instructs us to love people, and then another one is just kind of like challenging others around me and like accepting the challenges from them. Done that for a while. Like me and Rebecca, like we'd be like reading and like kind of challenge each other. Like, okay, well, what did you gather from this, and how are you going to apply that? So kind of getting back to like setting that in stone, and kind of getting back into a habit of it and making it something that's like something that's a priority.
Amen. Anybody else?
I think to add to some of this too, when I started reading this stuff and he said it to me, the commitment part, we started this thing this past year at school. As baseball kids, it's commitment over want. We call it COW. And we use it all fall, we use it all spring. And so we talk about that if my want outweighs my commitment, then I won't have a problem. Doesn't matter what it is in life, the commitment has to outweigh the want. And so as we went through the fall, we did this thing, and it's kind of in a classroom, and I said, hey, here's this exercise only works if rise. And I said the coaches gonna do it too. So all the coaches kind of look like, oh man, but this is the only way it's gonna work. Just threw out these random questions, this panel of questions about, and we took some blue painter's tape and put it on the ground, and put commitment on one side, put one on the other, and just these random things that if I was gonna be a part of this program, I was gonna be this. And if I took this away from you, if I told you how to do that, would you do it? And kids started seeing how people were swaying. And I said, and so I take that back and I think about our walk with Christ. If he came down and actually sat with us, and said that this is what you're gonna have to give up, this is what you're gonna have to do. And what it did was it not only helped them, but it helped me, especially I think as we started, when I started dealing with whether it's parent issues or whether it's arguing with parents during the game. That's all we action. But you think back and you go back and you give yourself self-observe, you self-reflect, you examine yourself and say, wait a minute, it goes back to commitment over want. That's one of those things where am I going to belittle myself and I'm going to get into an altercation with this dude, and I got these kids here and they're looking at me and I've been telling them all the time that this is not what we're going to do, but I'm doing it. So that immediately came to me, and that helped us so much, and it helped me, like I said, it helped us to always self-reflect in the season. Goes back to commitment on want. The moment we want to quit, the moment we just always somebody look at somebody and go, still love it. It's that simple. The kid would go, yeah, you're right. So I just think that for me, I think that's what I'm kind of getting to the point where when I hit a wall and right now my want is outweighing my commitment. So kind of need to reverse and find out what my commitment is with this, whether it's, whatever it is, whether it's kids, whether it's at home, whether it's job, whatever. When I start struggling, find out what my commitment is.
Amen. Anybody else? Well, and that's what, because I looked at it kind of in both respects, because piggybacking off of what Jalen said a little bit is if you have a goal and you never write it down, 75% of the time you're never going to try to accomplish that goal because you can't see it. And the Bible says people without a vision perish. And so, if you consistently, or if I consistently see myself as not ever achieving it, then I never will. But if I believe and know that I can achieve it, whatever project that is, whatever walk that may be, that never means that we become perfected. But what it means is we continue to walk with the desire to be pruned. Think about trees, as I think it was on Sunday night, that storm came through. And as I was driving down to work, several trees had fallen, and they didn't fall at the root. They fell somewhere higher up in the tree. And to me, that was because that tree was never pruned correctly. So it got to a point where it broke rather than being pruned in that tree, because when you prune it, it grows up. And so, and I think about that when it comes to projects. There's been multiple projects in my life, whether it be in my walk with the Lord, whether it be personal, whether it be on my job, whether it be, where the intention was great. But because I faced some adversity, then I gave up. And the thing is, to me, when it comes to a project, kind of like Josh was saying at the beginning when he said his first thing, was you may be on the verge of that breakthrough, but because you didn't stick it out, then you lost everything that you did up until that point. And, because you didn't weigh the cost to think, this may cost me this. I think about everybody has been commenting on the Facebook pictures of Shelby. Well, she needs to come train me. She needs to do this. And I said, I can promise you this, being in the gym is the easy part. I said, the food prep that she had to do in order to get to where she was so much more crucial. The things that nobody sees were the things that got her to where she was. I said, so everybody thinks just going to a gym is going to get you that kind of physique. And again, I don't think that people know the cost that it takes. So if it takes that much physically, imagine the cost it takes to be spiritually. Really, do we want to be Paul? Think of all that Paul had to endure. I count everything rubbish up into this, and think about it. Paul was beaten, he was flogged, he was stoned, he was shipwrecked. The list goes on and on and on. And yet, my prayer is, God, I want to be like Paul. And so the Lord convicts me sometimes and says, really? You really want to be like Paul? Because this was what Paul had to endure, even to the point where in other countries, when kids your age come into a relationship with Christ because of the family's religion, they boot them out of the house. And so again, are we willing to count the cost of what it means? Because at the end of the day, again, I say go back to the same thing. Jesus usually, foxes have dens, birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. That's not an encouragement to say, that's what I want to do. I want to be homeless. I want to struggle. I want to have to go through things. But again, count the cost. Nita always used to say it all the time when we would have our business meetings. She'd always say, count the cost. We got to count the cost on certain things. You may not remember it, but that just always stuck in my head. Are we willing to count the cost?
That's the thing to me. Like, and I don't know if it's because of bad doctrine, bad teaching, whatever, but somewhere along the line, Christianity got turned into, you come to Christ, man, everything will be like everything will be all good. From I'm gonna be financially prosperous. It's like just everything will run smooth. It's like that's not what I read. I don't read that, but somewhere along the line, that became the narrative. So it's like, and that's attractive to people, but that's not what he was doing. He wasn't coming saying like, follow me. Look, we're gonna stay at the Marriott. We gonna eat steak and shrimp. He didn't say any of that. None of it, like you said, it didn't sound appealing at all, unless we're really like in tune with him and really like allowing Paul said, Paul talks about like being a bond servant, and a bond servant is somebody like that has no say at all in whatever God's will is for his life, and that's is not, and like you said, that's not just a desire for Paul, but to follow after him, and like I said, man, it's just a bad narrative to think that, well, me going to church, I'm following Christ. No, that's not following Christ. Going to church on Sunday or Wednesday, I was at, that's not following Christ, or just, and I think sometimes, like I said, it's like, sometimes people associate, I was thinking about this earlier because the guy works at something, people associate whether it's financial or like career, those type of things, they associate that with like you know, man, God's really blessing you. But you know, the Bible's God ran on the just and the unjust. I mean, we can look at Job. You know, Job, so what? Job wasn't doing nothing wrong. But by the world standards, it's like, man, like even his friends are like, what'd you do? Tell him, what'd you do wrong?
Yeah.
You know, and that's just the mindset, because like I said, for the mindset for a lot of people is like, I follow Christ, you know, everything is gonna be just, it will be smooth, and it's like that's just not reality.
Anybody else? The next question was, what kept you from finishing the project? I kind of think we hit on that. The next one is, what warning is Jesus giving his disciples in verses 28 through 30, where he uses the building of a tower to illustrate his point? Can you read that one more time? Greg, just kind of refresh. 28 30. Yeah. You do.
Says, for which of you wanting to build a tower doesn't first sit down to calculate the cost to see if he has enough to build it, to complete it. Otherwise, after he has laid the foundation and cannot finish it, all the onlookers will begin to ridicule him, saying, this man started to build and wasn't finished.
So he says, what was the warning Jesus gave his disciples in verses 28 through 30, where he uses the building of a tower to illustrate his point?
That discipleship costs us all we have. So those who have not allowed him in, wasn't that right? Those of us who have not allowed him in as Lord and Savior, lives, what is, I can't remember anything. He wants all of us, and in order for us to have all of him, we got to give up all that we have. Because I can't remember what I wrote.
Amen.
What was the question again?
What was the warning? What warning is Jesus giving his disciples in verses 28 through 30, where he uses the building of a tower to illustrate his point?
I think it's like kind of like you have to be mindful of like the things you say and you do, and the people around you that are watching. Like, you know, like you proclaim Christ, and if you're not like holding them to a standard, you'd be like, "Didn't you say X, Y, Z?" I kind of thought about it a couple weeks ago. Me and my dad were doing this diet, and I was eating something, and I sat at the table, and he was like, "You still doing it?" And kind of like. And kind of like, that's what I thought about when like kind of going back to the blueprints. Someone's like, "You still thought you were gonna build that tower? What happened?" You know, kind of call you out on it. And so it's like whenever you're representing like or you're proclaiming like Christ, and like the image you set is so much. It's that much more important, not even just for yourself, but it's kind of like that's like an opportunity kind of wasted. Like that's a person that could be like, well, that person says they're a believer in Christ and they don't even go through what they say they do. So why should I? You know what I'm saying? So I think it's something we have to be mindful of, just the impact that a lot of people.
Amen. Anybody else?
First thing came to my mind is like you almost do more danger than if you kind of what Jalen was just saying. You almost do more danger if you're portraying the wrong thing. You know, it's kind of like that old Bob Orpheus reference where like if you're not gonna do it right, then let's not do it at all. Because you're doing more harm. You know, you're doing more harm to people and yourself. And if you're not thinking about what it's gonna cost you and cost others, because whether we know it or not, a lot of times whether we're doing the right thing or not, you either bringing people to Christ or you're running away from Him, because we all some kind of way in some form or fashion there's some people that are connected with us and attached to us, and so we either walking in a way that is shining some light and everyone, hey, what's different about you, or hey, you doing wrong, and hey man, I'm gonna run with you anyway because I just like it. That's so. I guess that if you're not careful, You've been bringing people or you don't know what?
Think of it as, kind of like I relate it to work, like to a lesson plan. One thing that our instructors have to have, and have to keep in our files is a lesson plan. And that lesson plan has it has all the instructors, which we are disciples, has all the materials that you're gonna need, how long it's gonna take, and in this case, it's indefinite. Your audience, you have your bio. What does your bio say? But it lays out everything from start to finish, and everything has to be in order, and you know ahead of time what you're going to need to get that project or that lesson done. And I don't know, that's just kind of running through my mind. If you compare what our walk would be like as disciples, and all the materials that we need, our what do we call it? Subject matter experts. What do we know that we can share or need to share with our audience?
Amen. Anybody else?
I guess it kind of reminds me of back in college station, my Bible study leader was telling me how a big problem in college station is like people remaining lukewarm. So like the Lord would rather you be hot or cold, and like if you're not going to count the cost, if you're not going to see the value, like don't even start. Like you might as well like remain cold if you're not going to like be hot, or he'll like spew you out of his mouth if he says something like that. So that like building reminded me of lukewarm.
Amen. Well, and that's what I think about, because I always say this, because you have to have engineers that they build these big old bridges, and they set these big old pillars, and so I think about it, if you turn around and you didn't do everything that you needed to do in order for it to line up correctly, and so you get done and there's a bridge that's like this, there's a problem, and think about, I mean, what I'm saying, where they're not matching up because somebody didn't do what they were supposed to. Well, I mean, think about the person that put it together. What are they going to turn around and do? They're going to ridicule them. I mean, that's the way it is with our life with Christ. If our bridges don't line up with Christ, we don't make that connection, then it gives opportunity for people to ridicule us for not lining up with what His Word says. And so, I mean, they make fun of us. They call us hypocrites. Because of the fact that we say one thing, but yet we do something totally different. I read this morning by Sam, who used to be here in Little Sam Brodus. And I just thought, man, this is so true. He said, we have to chill with having all this grace and mercy for our friends when they aren't living right and condemning everyone else. Something doesn't add up. If we're going to be consistent, we have to be consistent across the board. And that's including with ourselves. Most of the time, the things we don't like about other people is we don't like it because we know that's in us. So we're quick to point out their faults, but yet, again, our bridge doesn't line up. But when we're lined up with Christ, then nobody can come back to you and go, well, man, you said all this, dude, but you doing all these things over here. I see you at Midtown every Friday. I see you smoking pot. I see you doing all these different things. But yet on Sunday, you're talking about, well, look what God's done for me, I mean, because just like you said, I mean, at the end of the day, if what I say is different from what I walk, then why am I doing it? And kind of like she said, I mean, that's being lukewarm. I mean, and think about it. I mean, I don't drink coffee, but apparently lukewarm coffee is not all that good. What I hear, I don't know, but I mean, is it? I mean, I think about a soup, I mean, I don't like lukewarm soup, I mean, and so I think that's, just like you said, I think when it's that way, I mean, in fact, the Bible even says it's detestable to God, I mean, He spews you out of His mouth, so I think it's, but when we count the cost, God gets to do the impossible through us. And there's no greater reward than to, especially if you pray for somebody, and you see God work, you're like, man, that's so awesome. I don't know about anybody else, but I get pumped up when I see God do things like that. was it me and you talking the other day on the way to the store about all the things that transpired in order for something to happen. I can't remember what we were talking, but I was thinking about, okay, if I didn't meet Greg at ADT, and then I went all the way back to, my parents would have never met each other. And you just look at all the different things God did to make this happen. And again, I'm not going by numbers. I'm going by the impact that the people in this group can have because of God orchestrating this from, I knew you before I knitted you in your mother's womb, and I called you according to my purpose. Not mine, but God's even. But you know what I'm saying? But look what God did. And I just look at it and I just stand in amazement about how awesome God is. So it says, of course, we kind of hit on it. What was the main point Jesus was making in verse 28 through 30? And then the last one is, why is it important to count the cost prior to making any commitment on starting any project? Why is it so important?
I mean, you think about it like a physical building. Like he says, sit down first, estimate the cost. It says, if you lay the foundation, able to finish it, and you think about it like an actual building, it's like, you go to build a building and you pour the foundation. That's one of the most expensive parts. And it's like, okay, well, you just wasted all that. Physically, you're wasting money. So you think about it spiritually, you're wasting your own time. The stuff you're doing, like I said earlier, is detrimental to other people's like perception of the Christian walk. And then just kind of it's like being lukewarm. It's better to just not even waste your money or your time and kind of just keep. If you're not about it, just don't do it. And if you're gonna do it, then fully invest in it and kind of put everything you have into it.
To go off of like what he's saying, and it could apply to anything, but anything that's not completed, like typically doesn't get rewarded. So, I mean, if you have an unfinished project, well, they're not going to sign off on the final contract and give you that money or whatever it is, unless you finish it until the end, until you complete it.
I say you risk looking foolish if you don't finish what it is that you say you're going to start. And in the same token, like even not talking about building, but as far as like the body of Christ, you're instead of building up the body of Christ, you're almost tearing it down. In a sense, it's like you're giving the Christ followers or a bad reputation, a bad name. You're marring that name by living however you're living. That's not, according to the word, because people are looking at what you do and they, oh, look how he does it. He's only half-hearted. You only, okay, I'm gonna do this thing and I'm only gonna sweep. I'm gonna sweep the floor, but I'm only gonna sweep just over there. Somebody else can do the rest. It's like I did enough. I did my part. You do yours, but no, why not do the whole thing or do all? It's like do all everything you do. You need to do to the glory of God. And so it's like like Flame's song. He's all in. You push all your chips in and give it all you got. Don't half step or if you're not gonna go all in, then get out of the game. Or don't even get in the game. Fold. Fold.
I mean, how many people are going to buy half a car?
Yeah.
Hey man, I got this great deal right now. I'll cut it in half because it's only half a car. But I mean, it's regular $5,000, but I'm only going to charge you $2,500. I mean, would you not? I mean, how foolish would you look buying half of a car?
When I put a motor in it, it's going to be nice.
Yeah. So it's gonna be. I got a booming stereo system in it. It's only got tweeters in the front, but you know what I'm saying. So I mean, I think that's, and just like Greg and Jalen said, I mean, it's no different than going to a house, and it's a 2-story home, but only the first floor was built. All right, let's move in. I mean, So I mean, I think that's if you would expect the full thing to be done if you paid a full payment on it. Well, Jesus Christ paid a full price for us. And just like Nita said from the beginning, all he wants is us, all of us. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the cost is us. And I thought my favorite saying is, or one of them is, Christ gave his life. The least we can do is live ours for him. Anybody else?